experiencing more grief. I know I sit across students and they're just babies, and the pain that they have already experienced in their life. I cannot imagine the layered stories of suffering and sorrow that are represented in this congregation. That you have lost people and then lost more people. I can't imagine what that compounded grief looks like, and that you feel like, can he still hear me? Can God still work through all these layers of pain and suffering that I'm dealing with? Let's see what happens when Jesus encounters that kind of grief. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out. I'm back in verse 12, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd with the town was with her. Now, friends, when we lose somebody, when we experience grief, there's really not much that can be said. In fact, words often add to the sorrow. But look how the whole town has come to her. In the face of suffering, what does community do? It comes. It comes and walks with this woman to the gate, through the gate, expressing the grief that they share for her. So Jesus sees all of this, but he has already locked in on this widow. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her. What do some of your translations say? Give me other words for what's happening here. Compassion. His heart is moved with compassion. That means that God, made human in the face of grief, is moved in his core. In the face of this kind of sorrow, something happens inside him, and so he stops. This is God's reaction to our suffering. To the question, where is God when we're suffering? Where is God when we're grieving? Where is God when I'm in pain? He is moved with compassion for what you are experiencing. He does not go blind to these things. His heart is moved, and it was out to her, and he says, "Don't cry." You've known me for 27 minutes now. Let me just double check. 23, almost 24 minutes. Let me tell you something about myself that you probably already guessed. If I am crying, what should you not say to me? Correct. What should you seldom say to anybody who is crying? Because when humans encounter tears, there's often discomfort. But my friends, I propose this to you. When Jesus says, "Do not cry," when Jesus walks up to your grief, when Jesus parts the crowd and draws to this woman, when Jesus says, "Do not cry," it means that he's about to end the pain. He's about to end the suffering. The life giver is about to cast out all of the suffering that we've experienced. When Jesus says, "Do not cry," he is faithful to wipe the tears from our eyes. Verse 14, then he went up and touched the coffin, and those carrying it stood still. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The young man, I say to you, get up. If you are sitting at the well, destitute with nothing, these words echo for you. Young man, I say to you, get up. Young woman, I say to you, get up. Jesus is here. Jesus has been moved at your suffering, and he is here now. And the dead man sat up. Whew! Friends, what did the dead man do? Yes, ma'am. The dead man stood up. That never happens until Jesus walks onto the scene. The dead shall rise. He is faithful to take away all of our pain and suffering. So across the echoes of death, this young man hears the voice of Jesus. And so what does the young man do? He sits up. The dead man sat up, began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. When Jesus enters the scene, the broken things are restored. The suffering ceases, and the tears cease to fall because Jesus is there. And I leave you with this. They were filled with awe and praise God. A great prophet has appeared among us, they said. God has come to help his people. Today, I say to you, in the face of all of your suffering, God has come to help his people. He does not go blind to your suffering. He sees you and he longs to wipe the tear because the Lord has come to help his people.